hi. I didn't see you there. I was just brushing my Meermin. I was. You should play the intro. Oh, I don't have an intro. Damn it. Okay. Okay. Oh. Oh, God. I cracked myself up. Okay, hi. Talking about two different shoes today. Both of them are from Meermin, a brand out of Spain where the shoes are made in China. Both of them are made out of shell Cordovan from Shinki, which is a tannery out of Japan. So, a couple things before we actually start talking about the shoes. Generally, when people are talking about leather as a material, that leather is from cowhide or calfskin. Both of these shoes, this pair of Norwegian split-toe boots, and then this pair of, it's an apron-stitched slipper loafer hybrid situation, are made out of shell Cordovan. And for those of you who don't know what shell Cordovan is, shell Cordovan comes from it's almost like a non-porous shell, if you will. It's a material that sits near the horse. It's from a horse, and it sits in the rear quarters of the horse near the horse's butt. So if you think of like a big honking horse butt, right in the rear quarters of the horse are these really, they're maybe 18 inches long. It's a circular ovular material it's non-porous, and it's really, really, really dense. It's the fibers, the material are really, really densely woven. So shell Cordovan is rather expensive, especially compared to cowhide. It's a lot harder to work with, but some of the trade-offs that you get with shell Cordovan is both of these shoes have probably between 20 and 30 wears each. As you can see, even the soles on these are starting to wear down quite a bit, but they're still in pretty good shape. And then I got these with commando soles. But as you wear shell Cordovan, what happens is it doesn't crease like traditional leather. It develops these really beautiful folds that you can actually work. You can work over them with a polished oiled deer bone, and it allows you to really kind of smooth out the creases. But shell Cordovan does not get those little micro creases that cowhide does. Shell Cordovan folds. And it's a really, really beautiful material. I think a lot of people might be a little put off by wearing something from the rear quarters of a horse. I'm not. So now that shell Cordovan talk is out of the way, both of these shoes are from Meermin, which is a brand out of Spain. All of the shoes, though, are made in China. So the owner of Meermin comes from a shoemaking family related to the shoemaking family of Carmina on the island of Mallorca in Spain. So if you remember from the TLB Mallorca video that I did, that's located on Mallorca, which is an island in Spain. All of the shoes, though, are made in China and finished in Spain. So where you might get a shoe like this out of shell Cordovan from other brands that provide this from, say, England or Italy or Spain, because these are made in China where the labor costs are much lower, both of these shoes were less than $400, which is really quite amazing for the material that you're getting. Granted, and I want to talk about the quality of the shell Cordovan as well, but little fine details that I'm going to talk about as we go through the video, really fine details. So I'm going to start with this loafer just because it's out of these two, it was my first ever pair from Meermin, and it was really what kind of sold me on the brand and also put me off from buying shoes from Meermin often. I have no idea how many people have said this, but countless people have said this. A Meermin shoe out of the box is stiff. There are stains in this shoe, actually in the pair of boots as well, that I'm looking at and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's where my blood was. Breaking in a pair of Meermins is hell. I have no idea why breaking in a pair of Meermins is hell for so much people, but it is. So the trade-off for a $200 shoe, that's kind of their starting price, is a really brutal break-in sometimes. In my experience, both of these shoes were really not fun to break in. So the trade-off for $200 is an awful, awful break-in sometimes. Um, this was not a $200 shoe, obviously, like I said. But now that the shoe is broken in, I love them. I love wearing them. I wear these with shorts. I wear them with jeans. I wear them with everything, and I absolutely love wearing them. They've really broken into my foot nicely, and they're quite comfortable to wear now, even with the dense, not very flexible shell Cordovan upper. One of the cool things about Meermin that I really love is that when you order these shoes with a leather sole, you can actually see that all of these leather soles are blind stitched, which is something that you'd see on a much more expensive shoe. And to kind of recap, a blind stitch, and actually you can see here where they cut the layer of leather from the sole. But a blind stitch is when you raise the top layer of leather on the sole, and then you do all of your channel stitching to attach the sole to the welt, and then you close the sole. So you get a really, really sleek looking shoe on the sole side, and then obviously as things start to wear down, you'll start to see the threads. But out of the box, it's a really attractive look, and it's a little attention to detail that's really, really quite magnificent to me. The shell Cordovan from Shinky, one of the things that I want to talk about as well is, while some shell from like Horween, for example, folds, the bloom on shell from, say, Horween is not nearly as intense as some of the bloom that I've seen from shell Cordovan from Shinky. So when Cordovan is treated, they stuff it full of waxes and oils and all of the sort of different things to turn it into a material that'll last a very long time, like most leather. As you wear it, though, because shell Cordovan is non-porous, some of that wax and some of the oils start to kind of make their way to the surface. So me brushing my shoes at the beginning of the video, while hilarious, was functional a little bit in actually helping to settle the waxes and the oils back into the shoe. When shell Cordovan is worn, generally it doesn't need a whole lot of work outside of just a lot of brushing to give it this really beautiful glazed shine. Granted, some shell Cordovan is glazed, like this is. So, talking more about this loafer, a hand-stitched apron over the vamp. It's just exactly what I wanted. I don't really love loafers, to be completely honest with you. I own two. My other pair of loafers is from Carmina, and it has a relatively chiseled toe. It's on the Rain Last. This, I don't know, I saw it and I was like, I wanted it so bad. It was one of those shoes that you look at it and you sit on it for a day, and while you're sitting on it, you're like, ooh, I gotta have it. And I felt really confident in my purchase when I was buying it, without really thinking too much about sizing and thinking too much about how it's going to fit. This was my first ever pair from Meermin, and I got it from a made-to-order program. So, high risk, high reward, and the reward was great. I really am satisfied with these shoes. Let's see, I've spoken about the sole, I've spoken about the upper, some of the little quirks of shell Cordovan and brushing it and what that does. If I take the shoe trees out real quick, you can see that there is a nice little leather heel cup over here that has softened up really nicely over time. And I don't know if the camera's picking this up, but I tried to get a light here that would be a little less harsh than like a bright LED. But my foot fits pretty perfectly actually in this shoe, and this is on the HOK last, if I remember correctly, the Hoke last. I have no idea how it's pronounced. Before I forget, before I put the shoe tree back in for realsies, a detail that you don't see on a lot of less expensive shoes is a little patch of suede right here on the heel, in the heel counter. And this is really, really helpful, especially if you wear these without socks or with really thin socks, because this little patch of suede here is going to help provide a little bit of friction and help keep your foot comfortably in the shoe. So it's a detail that you don't really see on shoes within this price point, but it's a detail that Meermin is allowed to add, and it's a detail that I think is really important to add. So this is the loafer. Now let's move on to this Norwegian split toe boot. So a lot of people are afraid of wearing their shell Cordovan in snow or in rain or doing whatever. I have worn this in blizzards. I've worn these in rain. I've worn them on hikes. They've been covered in mud, and I think they've held up pretty well, actually. the uppers have been treated with Saphir Cordovan cream polish on these specifically twice. But that's just because I really, really wanted to do everything I could to maintain the color and the shine and all of that stuff that I love about Chuck Cordovan. Again, the break-in on these sucked. 24 hours total of wear, not a day's worth, but like if I spent 8 hours in the shoe one day, that was 8 hours total. And then I needed 24 hours of just bleeding and feeling unhappy and uncomfortable. Worth it now that the shoe is breaking in. I can wear these all the time. They really don't feel too uncomfortable. And again, the fit of these shoes for me is pretty spot on. I wear these, true to size and UK sizing. I'm a 12.5 US. Both of these are 11.5 UKs, and I've had no issues with sizing. Thick socks, generally, especially in these, I haven't worn these with thick socks, but in these, if I've worn them with like thick alpaca wool socks, they felt pretty tight. So outside of some of the little details on this boot and this boot, you can see that this boot is 360 degree welted, whereas this loafer is 270 degree welted. So when a shoe is built with a welt, the welt can go 270 degrees around the shoe and then end at the heel, or the welt can go 360 degrees all around the shoe. Functionally, it doesn't really change how more or less fragile the shoe might be. All it really does is it changes how the shoe might look. So a 360 degree welt has more hardware, so it's a little bit bigger, it's a little bit thicker. Commando soles, I wanted to buy these boots to basically go anywhere and not really give a hoot if I was going to be, going through snow or going through ice or going through rain or whatever it might be. I got these boots to do boot things and to see how the shell Cordovan would hold up. This was my second pair in shell. I have 3 currently. And, I wanted to really get an idea for how you could wear this material without breaking the bank even more and getting a pair of Aldens, for example. There really isn't a whole lot to talk about outside of some of the smaller details on this shoe versus this shoe, just because this shoe has some more rugged hardware. But one thing that I do want to talk about and really, really emphasize is Meermin, where it stands as a brand. In my experience, their customer service, for me personally, has been fine. I sent them one email when I ordered this shoe because I ordered the wrong pair of shoe trees, and I said, hey, can you just make sure that the bigger size of shoe trees is in the boot? And they said, sure. And when they sent me the shoe tree, the worst thing about it was that the wood had chipped. At least they sent me shoe trees that were the right size. This little chip here, it doesn't make a huge difference in, the functionality of the shoe tree. It's helping the shoe maintain its shape and absorbing moisture and all of that stuff. It's just one minor inconvenience that I'm annoyed that they sent me a broken shoe tree, but I'm glad that they responded to my email and got me the right size. These were Meermin branded shoe trees. These are Stratton shoe trees that I got off of Amazon. Almost all of my shoes have Strattons in them unless they are either the branded or a lasted shoe tree. The price of these shoes is really interesting. I think for an entry-level brand for welted footwear, Goodyear welted footwear in this case, none of these are hand-welted. None of these in particular are hand-welted. Personally, I have a hard time justifying the purchase for a pair of Meermins because for a little bit more, or sometimes even a little bit less, you can get a better shoe. And better is subjective and a little bit objective. I'm hesitant to buy a pair of Meermins again just because my experience with breaking these in just sucked. I did not enjoy doing it. I know it sounds a little bit like an exaggeration, but I just did not enjoy breaking these shoes in. I don't really love bleeding all over the inside of my boots. However, for a $200 shoe, you're getting a lot of fine details. I don't know if a lot of people spending $200 on a shoe like this, though, really care that much about the fine details. And that's something that I've really had to think about when, like, before recording this is if you're spending $200 on what presents themselves to be a value brand, a really, best bang for your buck brand, why not go to another brand that might be 250 or 300, like Grant Stone or Allen Edmonds on sale? And what you're getting in Meermin are unique last shapes, first of all. They have a number of different lasts, a number of different toe shapes to work with. You're getting these fine details, and if you care about them, or if you want to be somebody who is going to dive down this path of whether it be sartorial, leaning, whatever it might be, or high quality footwear, if you're, say, if you work in, I don't know, like a body shop or something. I don't know, when you want comfortable footwear that you can wear that it's going to just last you forever. Like, I wouldn't suggest Meermins to you, but if you're somebody who wants to go into the office and really step up their style game and is okay with quality control issues that come up sometimes, or a really painful break-in, it's an entry point that will pay off sometimes with blood, sweat, and tears. My experience with Meermin has been above average, pretty good. I love these shoes, and that's kind of why I wanted to do this video, is to talk about like my experience with Meermin. This is the conclusion here for those of you. Sorry. So my conclusion, I know I've been rambling a little bit. My conclusion with these shoes is for unique shell Cordovan options, Meermin is almost unbeatable. They offer a ton of different colors, they offer a ton of different shapes, and for the price, it's really unbeatable. If you're getting a black cap toe Oxford to wear with a navy suit or a charcoal suit or a black suit, I would hesitate to suggest Meermin, because you can get better options that will hurt less, that will break the bank a little bit more, but the payoff might be more worth it, in my opinion. You don't have to deal with sometimes dodgy customer service. Granted, that all comes with a little bit of a higher price tag. You have brands like Grant Stone, you have brands like Allen Edmonds, you have brands like, Carmina on sale, if you can find them in seconds, for example. Cobbler Union, there are so many different brands that you could go to and pay a little bit more for arguably a better shoe that will hurt less. Sometimes $150 might be worth the extra break-in if that's something that you run into. And I know I keep going back to the break-in. That's just something that I'm really emphasizing because my foot, I bled for these. I bled for these shoes. So it's a solid brand. It really is a solid brand. The customer service is dodgy. The styles of the shoes are classic. Sometimes they're a little bit more rugged. Sometimes they're a little bit more style forward. But the options that they have are fantastic. Oh my God, I'm sweating. I love the shoes. I love these so much because there was no other option anywhere out there when I was looking for shoes. However, I would never buy a plain old shoe from Meermin because it's just not worth it to me. For something unique like this, 100% worth it. But for something that was just like, it's a shoe, I don't think it's worth it. And that's my conclusion. So thank you for watching. I hope the video was informative. I hope the video was entertaining. It's interesting trying to find the fine line of informative and entertaining. I hope you learned a little bit about a non-porous material that sits over a horse's butt. Thank you so much for watching, and have a happy Sunday. Or whatever day it is. I release these on Sundays. Oh my God.